Now we'll be recording. I want to thank you all and welcome you to our college planning night. We've been doing this a couple of years from the College Counseling Office to give sort of a big picture overview for 10th and 11th grade families in particular who are in different places, but in the more beginning to really turn your attention to searching and looking for colleges. So if you're an 11th grade family and you might have been here last year, so it may be a little bit repetitive, but we hope that it gives you a lot of information to go with. Going to see it. Okay. We'll start with an introduction. I'm Dr. Hausdorff, Wendell Hausdorff. This is my 6th year here at BASIS. And previously, before that, I was at an international school in Belgium. So I have quite a lot of experience in international admissions as well. I've been a college counselor 15 years and also an English teacher. So I love working with the students. I love being at BASIS and with your children. And yeah, look forward to this process with you all. Mr. Denny?
Good evening, BASIS family. I am Mr. Denny. This is actually my 6th year at BASIS overall, my first year as a college counselor at BASIS. From 2014 to 2019, I taught AP English Language at BASIS. From there, I obviously I left to pursue my PhD at University of Maryland College Park, but also worked with students applying for colleges at Georgetown's college prep program for about 4 years. So this is my first year as a college counselor back at BASIS, and I'm also a person who is committed to BASIS and is looking forward to working with each of your students. All right, so for tonight, we are going to cover several things, primarily the role of the College Counseling Office, what we are going to do for you, what we offer you and your students. Common college terminology, for those of you who aren't as familiar with the process, will give you sort of a background of what exactly certain words mean. We will also talk about some preparation tips and tricks, things you can do at this point in your child's matriculation through BASIS. Then we'll go into detail about the senior year, the senior project, and what you can expect from your student in that most crucial year when they are applying to colleges. And then finally, we'll take a couple of questions and answers. Let me be very clear when we take that time for questions, please make sure it is a question that is applicable to the whole group. If it is something specific to your student's specific situation, we will meet with you individually.
Okay, we always like to start with a little bit of bragging of how well our students do. These first things are based on last year's graduating class, 293 unique colleges and 379 acceptances across the board. I think the average number of schools that our students apply to is I would say around 8 or so. That's an under number for that, obviously. Sometimes students have very few, others apply to a large number, but somewhere in that range. They also earned a large amount of merit aid. That is the largest any class while I've been here has earned. There were more students than ever, however, so I think that does show, but they had very good luck, and colleges that offer merit aid often give our students $25,000, $30,000 a year, basically as a tuition reduction. We have a lot of colleges that come to visit us. More than 90 came last year, and similar numbers this year, and which we'll talk about later, but as you probably know, students from all of high school are invited to those visits. These other little notes are the types of universities our students apply to overall. You'll see that the majority are at comprehensive universities, either public or private, but we also send students to the liberal arts colleges, the technical universities, and some smaller numbers either overseas or into the arts or smaller sort of niche programs. And then, of course, some of the notable schools where we currently have students attending.
All right, next I want to go into essentially how we succeed, but specifically how each of your students, where they should be in this process, depending on their grades. So, for our ninth grade parents, this is what you can expect from the College Counseling Office. So this year, your students should have been assigned their counselor, either Dr. Hausdorff or myself. We've already pushed into one of their classes to introduce them to SCORE, the college counseling software and the system we use to help them apply, as well as search for schools. We will be having small group sessions with them this spring, also to guide them in their process and their selection process, and also making sure they're aware of what their focus should be, which at this grade should be almost exclusively academics. There is a chance for optional family meetings that you have with us, and of course, solar flare emails. I've been sending them occasionally. Hopefully, you've been receiving them. There'll be lots of information on them regarding summer programs, potential scholarships, etc. For our 10th grade families, obviously we have the college planning night, which is obviously today. We will be starting our meetings with you and individual families in mid-February through March. You can also have the option of individual meetings. These are not required, but if you want a deeper sort of in-depth discussion, we will be willing to offer that. And then, of course, you still have solar flare. For our 11th grade parents, your students will have individual student meetings, and actually now they've probably started early January and will last through mid-February, where they will have individual meetings with Dr. Hausdorff or myself to put together our sort of college application strategy moving into next year. We will also begin giving them a sort of methods to start looking for colleges that include on their actual list. We have, of course, Rising Senior Night this spring, and then, of course, family meetings in the summer with, again, Dr. Hausdorff and myself. Then, after APs, they will have essay assistants, as well as you have the solar flare as well. And then, of course, for our senior families, in addition to daily college counseling class, which they have, of course, every day during first period, obviously unlimited reading of essays, which at this point we pretty much have done all of that. So that's a little bit in the past. We, of course, walk through their college application process through Common App as well as FAFSA assistance, unlimited meetings, which several students definitely take advantage of, and of course, scholarship assistance, which they are doing currently. In addition to that, Dr. Hausdorff runs the senior project, which allows your students to graduate with high honors.
Okay, we're going to talk just briefly sort of about roles and responsibilities for each of the different parties here. I think the most important thing is that college admissions is a process. It takes a lot of input and teamwork, and you all parents, students, and your college counselors represent the team. So first up is the roles and responsibilities of the school. And these are the things that you can expect from us in terms of working with your students. We are here to guide them, to help through the whole process, to submit the required documents and do so on time and completely. We work with students very closely on their essays, starting in the spring when we first introduced the idea with them after APs, through the and then into the fall, through the summer and into the fall. We meet individually with students throughout their time. We have admissions events and give you information on admissions events. Bring the applications together. We read the entire applications with your students. We write letters of recommendation. And of course, we have our daily workshop and parent night. On the next side is the roles and responsibilities of the students. And this is not exactly a checklist, but it's a guide of the things that students should be doing and doing regularly. Think about the admissions process not as more as a marathon. It takes a long time, it takes a lot of effort, and not a sprint that's going to happen overnight. Students should be doing, obviously the academic piece is first and foremost. Anytime they need help academically or in sort of figuring their path, deciding on APs or extracurriculars or summer opportunities, looking for help where they need things, taking advantage of us since we are assigned to them as of 9th grade. They certainly can come in and talk to us in 10th grade or beyond, get involved in extracurriculars, and then begin to research the colleges. It's really important that students take the lead. They are the ones who are going to attend the university. As they become more into the searching for colleges, starting to use SCORE more and keeping things updated, they really have to know their deadlines and keep track of their deadlines, because that is beyond the scope of what we can do for every single individual college. And then finally, parents' roles and responsibilities for you. You are the biggest cheerleader and the biggest guide of in their lives. You need to be there communicating with them, being realistic with them, supporting them, helping them manage those deadlines, but also giving them ownership of the application process. As I said, they are the ones going to college. It is their choice and their experience. And it is nothing like what it was when you went to college, or when Mr. Denny and I went to college, or any of these different pieces. This is their process and their journey. So all of these are really important roles and responsibilities and ways that we work together as a team. These are some of the things, however, that we will not do. As I said, it is beyond our scope to keep track of every single deadline. Colleges change things, they post it on their websites, and students need to keep track of those. We don't write essays either. We don't even rewrite essays. We work with the student to tell their story for their voice, and they also need to be the ones who are writing it, and not and it needs to be in their voice and not using AI, by the way. We will not email admissions officers over small details. First of all, admissions officers are far too busy to have someone bugging them about a particular student. They love to hear from the students rather than parents or college counselors. And so students, we often encourage them to reach out to the admissions officers, but admissions officers are extremely busy, and we also don't want for the admissions officers to take a dim view of our students because we are bugging them. And finally, we will not misrepresent grades, achievements, or disciplinary actions. We have great integrity in our program. We will always advocate for a student to the best of our ability, but it will always be with full honesty as is required.
All right, so now we're going to go through a little bit of common college terminology. Some of this will be more useful for the parents that are not as familiar with some of the words we'll be using. So let's just go through one of the most obvious words that you might hear all the time, the difference between private and public schools. One of the things I want to make sure we get out of the way quickly is that this is not a distinction of prestige. It is more of a distinction of how schools are funded. So primarily when we're talking about private institutions, they are, of course, funded by tuition and private sources. Public schools are going to be obviously funded not only by tuition, but local and state governments. That is the primary difference. Now, obviously, well, I'll leave that alone. Because universities are funded from since private universities are funded individually, they tend to be public universities, that is, since they're funded by both state governments and tuition, they tend to be larger, right? And therefore, universities overall will have both undergraduate students and graduate students. That is going to be something that for some families is a bonus. Some families might view that as not the ideal circumstance. Essentially, do you want your student to be in an environment where, let's say, like the University of Maryland College Park, where there's 40 to 50,000 students total? Or do you want them to be on a college campus where there may be 5,000 students? Now, in terms of the pros and cons of public universities, they are pretty much listed here. We'll go through them together. Large public universities, for example, will generally have a lower cost of attendance. That's great. They'll also have a wide array of majors and courses. They will have emphasis on research, which is why they have graduate students. Many opportunities for your students to pursue many different fields, as well as probably opportunities to intern. They will, of course, have federal and state research grants. And depending on whatever your child is studying, that can be a great opportunity. Oftentimes, they'll have the best laboratory equipment as well, particularly if your child is studying STEM. Most schools will have a great, of course, professors in their fields, and of course, significant resources in a small college field. Now, the negatives of the large public universities tend to be that they are large. For example, your student will be in larger classes. I can't give you an exact number.
They're
I
such
can't give
idiots.
I can't give you an exact number, but specifically what we will have is a student will most likely be in a class that may be 100 or more students. That can happen. They'll have, of course, classes taught by graduate students because universities, of course, have graduate students. If you only want your student taught by a professor, maybe a large public university isn't the ideal situation. Of course, because of that, they'll have limited access to faculty. At large public universities, faculty are, I don't want to say reserved for graduate students, but they spend the vast majority of their time working with graduate students. Okay. Now, in terms of liberal arts colleges, we will have, actually, Dr. Hausdorff, is this your section?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to talk about the liberal arts colleges. A full disclosure, I went to one, and so I have a certain bias and a certain, they're close to my heart. The liberal arts colleges are much smaller than the universities, and they actually work with only undergraduate students. So you don't have graduate students as well, except in some cases where they might have a master's program. Rather than being divided by schools, for example, School of Business or School of Architecture or School of Music, or they are more broad-based, divided by different departments, and they are usually much smaller. The philosophy behind them is about educating the individual to be a critical thinker, and that specific career training should happen outside of the classroom, either through internships and work experience and graduate school and things like that. So it is less sort of professionally directed at the undergraduate level. The pros absolutely are about the small, personalized learning environment. Everything from classrooms to research to internships is all within the undergraduate population. For students who have lots of different interests or want to be in a more interdisciplinary situation, these are often great opportunities for you to do that. There's sometimes more flexibility in the courses and the way you can put courses together to create your program, and less sort of linearity in course selection. They are located in smaller areas usually. There are not very many urban liberal arts colleges, although there are a few. And so that's sometimes a pro and sometimes a con for our students. They do tend to be more expensive, and this is where we do see a lot of the merit aid coming from in order to help offset the cost of tuition for families. They are more less, they have fewer options for technical study in the program and career paths. And again, that is beyond their intention. Their intention is much more about the critical thinking and exploration and intellectual development of the student, and leaving the career part to other avenues. Okay. And then the other option of where many of our students go is the technical institute. So the places, these can be both public and private. Generally, they're larger and they're universities. And the familiar names would be like MIT or Georgia Tech or Rochester Institute of Technology or Caltech or these kind of places. Usually they have tech in the name, but not always. These are much more focused, usually very STEM oriented, less liberal arts, and then sometimes there are requirements, but less liberal arts. I think one thing that an admissions rep told me from Georgia Tech was, you can come to study history at Georgia Tech if you want, but everybody here takes computer science. So I think that really kind of encapsulated for me the philosophy behind the technical institutes.
All right. So you're wondering how you get your child to choose the right college. Now, I've actually, for those who are in our 11th grade parents, I've actually been talking to a lot of your students about this, like as we speak. But essentially, there are several factors. The general factors we like to go through are the ones listed here. So location, a lot of times our students aren't thinking actively about that. They're choosing a place not just to study, but where to they're going to live for the next 4 years. Um, what do they value? Do they value obviously climate? Do they value the state, the political outcome of the region, or even for your family? Can you is the travel to and from California something that you can do? Right? Is you want something local? These are things that should be taken into consideration. Then, of course, size, as I just finished talking about with, does your student want a larger university? Do you think your student will succeed at a larger university? Would they succeed in a room, in a classroom that has 200, 300 students? Or is the ideal situation something where there's closer to 20? I'm encouraging more and more students to care about also student outcomes. While that requires a little thinking a little bit further down the line, which may not be something that a 17 or 18-year-old is inclined to do fully, it is incredibly important when we think about job placements, particularly for those students who already have an idea in their mind that they want to go to college and immediately enter the workforce, or for students who already know they want a particular career that requires a graduate degree. Are they looking at the placement rates, the graduation rates? Are they looking at the universities that have internships and partnerships with local businesses? This is something we are encouraging them to do as they are thinking about their lists. And then, of course, facilities. Now, overwhelmingly, students care about the dorms and what they look like, how how they're designed. They're very preoccupied with that, but that's perfectly fine. I'm sure as parents, you probably care more about the academic settings, the classrooms, the labs, etc. But choosing a university is also choosing, of course, the student life that your student is going to inhabit. And we are very much encouraging students to make sure they go to the campus as well, take some tours. And then lastly, and overwhelmingly the most important, is going through the college website to ensure that the college has the academic program that your student wants to actually study. If you want to study archaeology, you probably don't want to just apply to, I'm going to pull something out of the sky. I don't think University of Maryland has a major in archaeology. I think they have it as a minor. Like, you might want to really think about that in terms of which universities you are looking for.
So when we talk about what the previous slide, as Mr. Denny was looking at different criteria, that's really picking the right college from the student's perspective, right? But there's always that perspective of whether they are going to be admitted to the college. And so looking at the right colleges from that aspect as well is an important consideration. Not so much when you begin the search. When you begin the search, you really want to find the types of colleges and locations and programs that appeal to you, where you think you will thrive. But as you come through 11th grade in particular, you want to begin to think about, what are my admissions chances? If I fall in love with this school, can I get in there? Now, your numbers, which will help decide that, GPA and test scores, are not ready yet for the 100%. This is my list. And they won't be until next summer, after APs are done and all the testing has been updated and everything else, and transcripts are printed. But now is the time to begin to think about that, especially for 11th graders, as you're searching. Where's my reach going to be? Where are my targets? And what are the schools I'm confident I'm going to be accepted to? And this slide is around that. So if you think about, first of all, you need to think about, like, where are your numbers at the end of whatever last grade. So for 11th graders, you have your 10th grade GPA and you have your PSAT scores, and that's what you have to work with. And somewhere on this kind of sliding scale, you're going to have a targeted area. And I think the best way to look at it is around the acceptance rate. So if you are a very strong student and you have very high numbers, your target rate is going to be at the higher end of these scales. And if your numbers are a little bit lower, then your target rate is going to be at the medium or the lower end of these scales. But everyone is going to find a place somewhere in these ranges. In my experience here, I think the target range for our students is the 30 to 60% acceptance range, depending on where you start it, and sort of on a sliding scale. And when you are looking at colleges and you're seeing, well, they take only 5% of their students, well, that's going to be a reach for pretty much everybody at all times. There's a certain amount of just luck, and sort of, you're in the right place, you have the right application, you have the right numbers, and they happen to be looking for you that year, that gets through some of those really, really small numbers. But if you think in the 30 to 60% range, there are so many wonderful colleges, and our students get admitted to them over and over and over again.
Now, what we don't want any of you to do is walk away from this session and think that your students' transcript and SAT scores are the only thing that colleges care about. That is absolutely untrue. I'm sure you've heard this word before, a holistic review. It is something that obviously college counselors hear all the time, and it's something that college reps say all the time. It is not just, it's not just blowing smoke. Their grades and scores are not the end all be all. Let me make this clear now. Even if your student has a 4.0 and a perfect SAT score, that does not automatically mean they will get in. I want to double down on what Dr. Hausdorff said. There is a lot of luck involved. With that said, just because your student has a 3.0 or a 2.5 and maybe a 1200 does not automatically mean they cannot get into certain schools either. I know that may sound a little crazy, but let me explain, when we talk about extracurricular activities, how important they are. For example, maybe your student is someone who's in the 3 range, but not on the higher end. But they're also a student who has started their own business and advertises it on a social media and has made money from it, or has an extensive internet profile and maybe has um, found a way to monetize I'm not sure, maybe a YouTube channel, which I have dealt with students who've done that. Again, that is significant. That will be taken into great considerations. Again, every student has their own path. I'm not saying you have to do that thing. What I am saying is even if you are a quote unquote perfect student, if you have no extracurriculars and you want to go to MIT, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You should have been maybe in Science Olympiad. You should have been on a robotics team somewhere. You should be demonstrating your interests in multiple places. That cannot be overstated. Okay. Now I want to pause before we continue and give the parents an opportunity to ask any questions. Again, we only will take a brief number of questions since we still have a lot of the presentation to continue. And again, as I said before, please make sure your question is something that is applicable to everyone in the meeting.
Any questions about what we've covered so far?
I think we have one person raising their hand right now.
Ms. Elvey, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. I'm an 11th grade parent, and to make this question as general as possible, my kids have been at BASIS since 5th grade, and there are some great pluses and some occasional minuses. And sometimes some teachers prioritize their work and don't, get that there's so much work for all the other teachers also. Sometimes, like recently, there's Model UN, and teachers don't get that, Model UN is also kind of academic and has a lot of work associated with it, and then assign double work on top of it. So with all of this stuff that you guys have shared and that we understand and about our role and the student role and your role, how kind of can you, if there is a way, assure us that all of the teachers are on board with this ultimate goal of getting into good colleges? Because I know you said you will not misrepresent anything. So we don't want to conflate anything or show an A when the student really got a C minus. But in terms of supporting the kids in the first place to get that A that they're capable of getting, and not punitively have them, be getting a C minus because of sort of a non-collaborative, non-team-like methodology. So I wonder if you can kind of address that. Sorry if it was too vague.
I think that the teachers here, there is no doubt, you all are here at BASIS, students and parents. I see a lot of both of you on this call, and everybody who is part of the BASIS community knows that this is a hard school and there is a lot of work. And the teachers know it, we know it, kids know it, families, you know it. And I think that, for one thing, if students are feeling really overwhelmed with work, I think they should talk to their teacher about if there is an extension that maybe they can have or something like that. If they have tests that are building up on the same day, to raise that question. They do have to sort of like try to advocate in that sense for themselves. I have sometimes had students come in and talk to me about being like having so much to do. And we sit down and talk about like, how can we help prioritize? Where can I help run some interference? How can we, there is no sort of easy answer, I think, to, trying to find having the priorities and trying to find the priorities at that time. I think the kids have to keep working at it, and they have to, they have to be vocal about it. Mr. Denny, do you have anything you want to add to that?
The only thing I think I would add is the simple fact that I do believe the staff and the teachers at Basis are very much on board with the idea that college is the ultimate goal. I do think that is a shared belief. I will, however, say that in terms of ensuring that a student is able to take advantage of every single opportunity while also getting the highest grade possible, that's probably a little bit difficult to pull off, only in the sense of if a student is in a certain amount of extracurriculars and that is something that demands demands for them to take attention away from the course, that is something that I don't know if the staff would have the ability to do. And I say that knowing full well that extracurriculars are very important for college admissions, but also for the integrity of the class. A lot of them are just, quite frankly, demanding. With that being said, while extracurriculars may be the lack of extracurriculars, or at least extensive extracurriculars, may be something that is an issue for some of our applicants, that has not stopped anyone from getting in. So I think keeping the main thing, which is if it is the coursework, if the student is unable to fully balance, if they're doing the coursework, I think it will help. And I'll use that to pivot to one of the other questions that someone put in the chat. Do colleges weigh the difficulty of the school when looking at grades? Absolutely. That's one of the reasons that we send our school profile. One of the reasons I think we do so well is that our reputation of our school and the fact that our classes are hard help a student get in. If they have a 3.3 here, that means significantly more than if they have a 3.3 at some other DC school. So that's definitely something that is very much important. I know there's a couple more questions. I think we'll take one or two more, but I want to make sure this is brief, but I know we have a couple more questions. Dr. Helsdorf, do you want to take the last couple?
Go ahead, Ms. White. I'm sorry, I can't see your full last name. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Absolutely. I kind of wanted to go back to the question that was posed before, because we clearly stated on the call that if your child is interested in certain topics and issues, they should fulfill classes and extracurricular activities that support that. And I noticed here that with my particular child, that while he is taking the classes and the extracurricular activities, like the prior parent said, there doesn't seem to be a notice that with some of those extracurricular activities like UN that require additional travel, that require additional other things, they're still given a lot of homework on the same day. They're up at 7 in the morning on the day that they're traveling, still trying to do homework, which is why the question I think was posed, are the teachers unified in recognizing the seriousness of the commitment that the kids are trying to make to both the academics and to their extracurriculars? How are they to support both goals in light of what you just said, that if this is their interest, this is the career path that they want, but they have teachers who are also still saying, okay, we know you're traveling, but you still have this assignment, this test, this and the other at the same time. That does not appear that the teachers are all on the same page in some way in helping to make this supportive of the students. And that's a lot to ask a teenager, to keep going back to the teacher to say, can you work with me?
No, I don't disagree with that. I know the MUN group has done a lot of traveling. And I mean, frankly, students do not have to travel with them. So it might be that sometimes students should say, you know, I'm going to go on 2 of 4 trips or something like that. I don't disagree with you, but I will say that, you know, the school, I mean, the academics are like what drive the school. And when, you know, when the students take extracurriculars, whether it's sports and they're playing games, you know, in the evenings, or if they're doing additional sports, or when they're doing a big group like MUN or Youth and Government, or some of the other really time-consuming sports. Science Olympiad is another one. Students do have to try to work and balance it. There is no doubt. And it is difficult. And I do think that, you know, that is a place that, you know, perhaps as a parent, you could raise with the teachers who run MUN that maybe we don't need to go to 4 different meetings this year. In the past, they haven't gone to that many, or, you know, to raise it with the students' teachers. But because I don't disagree with you that it's a lot of overload. But I do think that it is always going to be the school, the students, the school comes first and the academics come first. And a teacher does not have the flexibility of the curriculum with an AP curriculum to stop everything for a small part of the group that leaves to go on a trip. That's just the reality of it. I do want to just quickly some of the other things in the chat, and then we're going to move on. With the, when you're looking at schools, yes, look at if you can find on their website, the average GPA or or test scores in the 50 percentile. So between the 25 and 70 percentile, that'll give you a good idea of what that range is. We don't rank at our school. Because of the size of our school and the fact that everybody takes such a difficult curriculum, we just choose not to rank. And then the basis profile, we can send you a copy of that. It is really mostly information that allows the college to see the context of a student's transcript, what the curriculum looks like, what the senior year looks like, what test results for that grade look like, for the senior class grade, etc. So I think we're going to move on at the moment. We're getting a lot of questions in the chat around specifics around the AP scores. I will say that colleges that know us know our AP policies. And when they don't, that is something that Mr. Denny and I talk about in our recommendation letters. It says it very clearly, and we often talk about the impact of our testing policy on and on our students. Okay, we're going to move forward. We'll be taking some more questions at the end. Okay, let's see. We're going to turn our attention here. We're going to turn our attention to sort of what now for the student to start to prepare to some of these things that they can be doing in school. All right, the first one we're going to look at is exploring colleges and building a list. And this obviously list building becomes more important, and in the 11th grade, I like to tell 10th graders that this is the year to explore, because you really don't have anything at stake yet. Nobody's expecting you to know exactly where you want to go or what you want to do, and sort of the world is right there in front of you. So places to find information are, of course, very varied. People go to the, to the internet first and foremost. Some of the, even our news score platform. And by the way, I want to give SCORE a plug to all of you parents. Your students are registered on it. 11th grade parents were invited when we started the 11th grade meetings, and 10th grade parents, you will be invited shortly. I recommend that you create an account there. And so you can see, you can explore colleges, you can share them with your student, you can see what they are following. You can communicate with us if you want through them. It has replaced Naviance. We no longer have Naviance. So please, please make an account when you see that invitation. Along with the internet, however, there are some great guides. The Fisk guide is a wonderful hardcover, although I think it's probably electronic as well now. Also, Colleges That Change Lives is a small book with, I don't know, somewhere maybe around 40 schools, all of which are undergraduate small schools that really the focus is on undergraduate teaching. Of course, lots of information from family, friends, friends of family, families, friends. And I really recommend that students take the time to come to our visits in the fall in particular, where they can hear about schools that maybe they've never heard of. Usually it's easy to fill a room with University of Maryland students. It's much harder to fill a room with the St. Mary's College of Maryland, which is a very good small public honors college. And this is specifically about the college visits. It is open to all high school students. Often the person who comes to give the presentation is the person who will be reading the applications of students. So getting to be more than just a name, but actually a little bit of face time and get to understand that rep, and for them to meet you is really a good thing to do. Okay, Mr. Denny.
Okay, give me 1 second to make sure. All right, I'm going to have us focus now on academics and extracurriculars. And everyone, basically, as we've already said before, for academics here at Basis, of course, it is the end all be all at the beginning. That's kind of the system we have here. So just want to give some basics around the academics for if your student is still sort of matriculating in 9th and 10th grade. Obviously, earn the best grades possible. That goes beyond saying. Now, I would also suggest, and this is why every time we send out the solar flare, there's several summer opportunities listed. I would encourage all students in the summer to do something, particularly if it's dual enrollment, or entering some type of academic program that aligns with their interests. All of that helps build the student's profile as someone who doesn't just get good grades, but values the subject so much to study it beyond the classroom. That is really the bar when we're looking at emphasizing the student's academics for college admission. Also, in terms of academics, whether your student is a 9th grader or an 11th grader, it will be very important for both parents and students to reintroduce themselves to, of course, the Basis graduation requirements. Obviously, we all know that your student has to earn a 3 on at least one AP exam in order to graduate. And there are, of course, certain APs that the student has to take in order to graduate from Basis. Okay. Now, in terms of extracurriculars, there are many different types of extracurriculars that will make a significant impact on a college application. Everything from just clubs and sports, community service, which notably our students could do more of. I understand that's difficult given, again, the academic rigor of the school. Employment, and please do not undersell employment. Several academic reps this year, I think the college rep from Cornell said to me they actually prefer students who have jobs over students who have internships or clubs because they generally view them, the employment as being more legitimate. So again, I want to emphasize employment is also something that is valuable. Passion projects, even things where the student is doing on their personal time. If your student is so in love with crocheting that they crochet 50 blankets a year and then sell them, that's wonderful. I want them to tell me that. That is something the colleges would love to know. Again, anything that emphasizes character. If your student is one of the Boy Scouts of America and is doing an Eagle Project that's focused on helping the local community, these are things that are valuable, that make a significant difference in the admissions process. Okay. I would also encourage your students, again, when they're thinking about what to do outside of school, it is better for them to have a passion about something. This is why I said earlier, if you have a student that is sold out to be an engineer or is in STEM in some way and they're serious, it has to come through in other aspects of their life outside of their AP scores. Are they going to programs in the summer to focus on I don't know, rocket launches or something like that? Or again, they have to have some type of passion. That's what really makes a student stand out amongst all the other students. A lot of students can have good grades. How many of them have good grades and have the passion to pursue things outside of school? And I'm saying it over and over again because I want to make sure that you all understand the importance of why that matters for college reps. And also seek leadership opportunities. One of the ways that a lot of times college reps can just look through whether or not a student's just, for lack of a better word, throwing a bunch of extracurriculars on their resume without actually doing anything. They probably value a person who's a president or co-president or captain of one thing and been doing that consistently over years than if you to have 10 things that you've done for one time of year and you have no true investment in. So it's not who has the most, it's who has the greatest depth. Again, quality matters over quantity. All right. Dr. Hausdorff?
This is just a very brief, if a student has a special talent or really wants to do arts, athletics, recruiting, any of that, that's really an individual conversation that we are always happy to have with the student. And now we're going to shift to everybody's favorite topic, admissions testing and SATs. So the world is still primarily test optional. However, this last year saw the beginnings of things shifting back. And it's coming for a couple of different reasons, one of which there are so many applications in the system now that some colleges just can't manage them. And another reason is that they were originally used as a kind of predictor of success, and colleges found that they did help predict success. And they used them also in scholarship decisions. So for all of these different reasons, they are beginning to come back. They are, so far we've seen it at the most highly selective universities, the Ivies primarily, and that tier of university, and a lot of the state university systems, particularly the southern states, also returning to testing. The smaller the school, the less likely it is going to be to return to testing. The liberal arts colleges, because they are very small, they are not as overwhelmed with applications, and they really do look at everything. Many of times, they don't even look at GPA. They look at what you took and how you did, and they read the narrative of who you are and what you're interested in through the courses you took. They're really much more interested in that than they are a number based on a Saturday in March or whatever. The UC system went completely blind, test blind during the pandemic, and has remained that way. So anybody who's interested in any of the public universities in California will not even, they won't even look at tests anymore. And the requirements, this is one of the most opaque parts of college admissions. And all I can say is read the requirements on the websites very carefully. If you have questions about them, ask the admissions people, send them an email and ask, because it is not always super clear exactly what they're expecting. Here at Basis, we do what's called SAT School Day. And that means that we are the test center for our own students. So we will take them to the National Union Building. We're doing it in March for the 11th graders. And we register them for it, and the city pays for it. So we will offer SATs in March of junior year and October of senior year. And those will be completely taken care of. If a student wants to take the SATs a third time, you have to register for it, find the test center, pay for it, etc. On your own. I wouldn't spend a huge amount of time taking the SAT more than 3 times. The scores usually can vary, but not a huge number, but not by a huge amount usually. And if you want to take it, I recommend you do so in either August. They may be starting a new test date in September, but please do not take them in May or June when you are taking APs and finals. The PSATs we offer in both the fall of 10th grade and the fall of junior year. Junior year is the National Merit Qualifying Test. 10th grade, there are no stakes, just practice. We do sometimes get questions about the ACT, so I put this slide together just to give you a brief comparison of the two. They both have the purpose of gauging college readiness in a single format that everybody takes the same test, and therefore they feel it's much more comparable. The SAT, you may know, was redesigned last year to be completely digital and to be adaptive, so that the questions that students answer on the first section determine the questions they get in the second section. That has made it a kind of a different test from that has made it somewhat of a different test from the ACT, which is still primarily a paper and pencil test. Although I believe they are making changes in 2025 to become adaptive. So at the moment, they're quite different, although they may be less so a year from now. In general, the ACT has always been more concrete. The questions seem easier in the way they're presented, where the SAT was very convoluted. Sometimes students said, I have a hard time figuring out what they're even asking. However, the ACT has 3 things that are different about it that make it more difficult in some ways. One is that the math is a broader range of topics. And so that makes it more difficult. Another is that there is a science section. You don't need to have specific science, but you need to be good with data. You need to be good with, apparently one of the types of questions is how would you set up a lab to maybe test something? And then the third is that there's more questions in the same amount of time. And so you have to, if you're somebody who really likes to think about, whoever that is, please mute your, if you're somebody who likes to think about the questions, that is, the SAT is much better for that now because the adaptive test is much shorter. So they're scored slightly different. Colleges do not care. It could be a good idea to take a practice test of the ACT and see, particularly if the PSATs, you had a low score or you really didn't feel like you understood the test very well, students, maybe take a practice ACT and see how that feels. So reviewing test scores, like I said, they are making a comeback, but colleges will say over and over again, no one was ever denied acceptance based on a test score. They are one piece of the puzzle. Most of the time, colleges do what's called super scoring, which they take your best score from whenever you took it. So if you take it 3 times and your first time you got your best English and your last time you get your best math, that's what they're going to look at. A few require all scores. If you do any applications outside of the US, they will usually take only 1 score or sometimes all scores, but they definitely don't super score. And really they use it differently. They, yeah, it is one piece of the puzzle. Of course, because it's coming back, we want our students to have a good test, the best that they can do, but it is not where they should be putting all of their stress and energy on SATs.
All right. So I want to give you all some more planning tips to help your students succeed, whether or not they're in 9th grade or 11th grade. The first one I think that is probably the most important and also the most overlooked is the importance of nurturing relationships. Relationships with, of course, their teachers, their college counselors, and with other people in their community. So I'll start with their teachers. And for our 9th grade parents, 10th grade parents, this is the most important now at this point. It's not just students will need their teachers, period. We will have to have recommendations from someone in a humanity and someone in a math. That's just what's going to happen. So it's not just, you want to make sure your student does as well as they can do. But in addition to that, there's a lot of sort of, and I don't want to use this word networking really, but their interaction with that teacher in class, their interaction with that teacher and throughout the school day, their interactions with that teacher in every aspect of their life at school will probably play a factor into whether or not that teacher agrees to write a recommendation for them. And that is something they should think about now, because when they're trying to get all of their teachers to agree to things by the 11th grade, they've already have built opinions of them. And we want to make sure those opinions are as positive as possible because those recommendations go a long way. In terms of nurturing relationships with college counselors, one of the things that Dr. Hausdorff and I do, and this is how I generally explain it to students when it comes to their transcripts, it is my job to put them in perspective, to make them a whole person. It is their job to make my job easier. And what I mean by that, they need to do as well as they can do. As well as they can do. However, if they have D's or C's or any grades that they find to be undesirable, that is not the end of the world. I can, as long as they're putting perpetual effort and they're explaining things to me, maybe a certain grade was a typical way because they had a bad testing day in an AP exam. It is my job to help explain that. The more they talk to me And the more I know, the more I can make them a whole person in the eyes of the college. That's why I ask so many questions and try to get to know them at such a deep level, as I'm sure Dr. Hausdorff does as well. And lastly, nurturing relationships with people in their community. If you want your student to have recommendations outside of BASIS, that is, of course, your prerogative. In order to do that, they have to have relationships with people, whether it is organizations, a side job, something, where they can actively talk about the student's characteristics. And that is why relationships are so important in this process. Please do not skip over the importance of a great recommendation letter. All right. And lastly, we've been talking about things that you can start doing as a family. Obviously, touring college campuses. Students have this, I mean, as you all know, they're 17, 18 or younger. They have an idea of what the college is, and then they'll actually get there and change their mind completely. Sometimes, or the opposite, maybe they're hesitant and don't really like the idea, and they go and they love it. The idea of being on campus can change a student's whole perspective. Also, if you are having your student, all students should be signed into SCORE. SCORE is increasingly becoming more and more important. We are using SCORE. We are no longer in the Naviance world, and the students really need to use it to search, to create their list, and quite frankly, to build their profiles. The more involved your student is with SCORE, the better it is. All right.
Okay. Okay. Very briefly, you all, I'm just going to touch on senior year. By the end of 11th grade, our students have completed all of their high school graduation requirements and BASIS graduation requirements. And so in 12th grade, they can do two different things that are really unique to BASIS. And I think for colleges, add that students have this year that is very much a transitional year into the demands of college. The capstone courses, they take 4 different capstone courses. Their emphasis is much more on research and presentation, discussion, writing, much more college level work. They don't take a single AP exam again. And it's really much more like a college seminar kind of environment. In addition, they have the college counseling workshop. And I can say that having done this a lot of years, I've never worked in a school where this commitment and dedication was given to college counselors to have a class dedicated to that. We do everything from start to finish in that class around the college application process. And we use November 1st as our general deadline so that every student has the possibility of submitting an early application should they choose to do so. And then, of course, there's senior project, which is for 11th graders, we will do a rising 12th grade night in the spring where we'll talk about this more in depth. But it is a paired research project paired with a placement of some kind in the field, an internship, a volunteer placement, and where the student spends 150 hours over the 10-week term. These things together make a unique final experience for the 12th graders. And so as we come to our close here, and I know we've thrown a lot at you, these are the things we just really want you to sort of take away, to find your passions and projects and throw yourselves into them, to keep focused on your academics, and for 10th graders to think about how you are, like when you get ready to choose your electives next year and things, think about taking an elective that will help like tell the narrative of what you're interested in and things like that. Work on building your college list or exploring colleges in SCORE. They have scattergrams available for students from our school that have applied to these colleges. Build your relationships, as Mr. Denny said, teachers, counselors, community members, and please remember at all times, this is a partnership. We are here to help you, to help facilitate this process for you and your child. And now we will go to questions again. I think we will go from the chat maybe.
Yeah,
and
there's several
ahead,
in the
Mr. Denny.
chat. There's several in the chat. Maybe it's best to go in reverse order, starting from the bottom.
Okay,
I know there was, sorry.
go ahead.
So I know there were several questions about whether or not we, I guess, about the number of letters.
Mhm.
So in terms of what is required, each student needs to have a recommendation from essentially an ELA teacher, an English teacher, and a math teacher, essentially. Math and science, but generally math. And then both Dr. Hausdorff and myself also write a recommendation. So that's 3 recommendations as a default that will come from BASIS. Now, if your student wishes to have an additional recommendation, they will need to, of course, contact that individual. Then that individual needs to send us the recommendation directly. Under no circumstances should the student see it. Now, in terms of whether or not the school will accept it, they should, although I'll be honest, it's a little bit depending on the school and how many recommendations they take. However, as a general rule, we always send a recommendation as a college counselors, and there must be 2 from the 2 types of teachers I listed. Everything else is essentially extra.
I will. Can I just
sorry.
add, Mr.
Please.
Denny, that for some of the very large public institutions, they no longer take recommendation letters or even our letter. They just want to see the transcript, what the student has taken, and the student's application. They are really what we would just call sort of gateway applications. You either have what we're looking for or you don't. And they have usually a pretty quick turnaround on admissions because it's not very holistic and it's not a very in-depth look. But in most cases, yeah, as Mr. Denny was saying, there are 3 that are sent and then an outside letter if a student has it, that they are often accepted as well. I'm just going to touch on the support for students in the finding an internship for Senior Project. Senior Project is a very independent project. I do have to say that from the beginning. It's open to every student, and it is optional and it is open for every student, but it's very independent. And the student works with their faculty member here on campus and me, both to help them develop their question, find sources, find resources to contact for their internships. But we do not do it for them. So they need to be able to reach out and either by email or contacts or through people or talking to finding an internship. It's a big part of looking for in the project and takes a substantial amount of time and persistence, a lot of persistence. And I will say that you won't be surprised, no adult will be surprised when I say that the majority of internships that our students find start by from somebody they know, either a parent or a friend of a parent or a friend's parent or a teacher who puts them in touch or someone that we've worked with before or someone I put them in touch with. But we do occasionally get cold emails and we do occasionally have parents respond to my pleas through Parent Square. But most of the time it is from a personal, just a personal, connection there. Most of our students do take the SAT, mostly because I think we do this SAT school day. So that's what we are connected to primarily. And I'm sorry to say we don't have SAT preparation. We have lots of people who do. I think the majority of students really use like Khan Academy, or now through the Blue Book app, there are practice tests and preparation materials and things like that. Okay, what else is coming up here?
As for wondering if BASIS doesn't rank, what should students do in summer programs or other opportunities to ask for a student's class rank? If they're asking for it, there's usually a place on the application to just simply state, we do not rank. There's usually not an applicable square or something they can press to let whether or not it's a summer program or scholarship opportunity know that BASIS does not rank. That is something that is overwhelmingly common. So shouldn't be a problem.
So I'm going to address this other senior project question. How does the senior project figure into the college application? So this is, it is not on the transcript until after the student completes it. But it is often something that we can talk about in our letter that a student is doing it. And it is always something that a student can write about in their application, or particularly this time of year when students have been deferred from a college or something like that, that they can talk about what they are doing in senior project as a way of showing the college their continued interest. So I think that is how it figures out. And it is considered the most rigorous part of what a student is doing. So when colleges ask us, is the student, you know, at a very selective college, if they are saying, you know, how rigorous is this student's curriculum, that is something that we would definitely address, that they were taking advantage of everything that BASIS has to offer. And then let's see. It is generally, this is the question, if a student is not STEM focused and plans a liberal arts major, why are they forced to have a math teacher, Rick? It doesn't have to be a math teacher. It has to be a quantitative teacher. And so I would say the most common are like biology or chemistry, along with your humanities. I have sometimes done economics as the quantitative instead of as, you know, paired with another history or English or something along those lines. But colleges like to see recommendations that bring new perspectives and information. And so if you have English and history, it's likely that you're going to be a similar student for both of those teachers. But for a math and science teacher or something else that has a slightly different perspective, you might have to approach it in a different way. And that would give the college a broader view of you as a student. Okay. I want to go back to just the leadership for a second. Leadership comes in a lot of different forms. And here in school, all of our clubs are usually led by seniors, and the juniors take over around this time. And the sophomores are showing their interest as the seniors take over. Similarly, we have house leaders and the house leadership program. Those students are really involved in helping develop the culture of the school. There's also lots of DC is a particular city where students are involved in a lot of advisory groups around the city, the school, the State Board of Education, there's a health advisory, there's a Metro Police advisory, the Youth and Government Group. I mean, it's unbelievable how many students, how many of our students get involved outside of BASIS and get involved in community service and sort of organizations outside of BASIS. And so it doesn't have to be in a club. It doesn't have to be. It can be them following something they're interested in that takes them in some other path. Do you want to answer that question about the class?
Yeah, that's what I was about to do. Can we, the question about the college counseling class in Try 1 and Try 2. So senior year, all of your students will have to, we split and either take Dr. Hausdorff or myself. And this is a course where we essentially break down the entire application process. All of the assignments for the class are all directly related to applying. So going through Common App, using SCORE to confirm a list, doing research on schools, literally from the essay work to the supplemental essay work, everything we do is walking your student through the application process. So that is actually one of the biggest differences between BASIS and I think most other high schools. They don't have to do any of it themselves, and it's built into their school day. They don't have to find time outside of school to do it, which is pretty big. That's a pretty big deal because it is a lot. So that is essentially what is happening in Try 1 and Try 2. And then usually, since our deadline is November 1st, we're going to spend most of Try 2 looking for scholarships. So again, the same process. Everything in the class is built on the application. And a lot of the other questions around, I think, extracurriculars and different groups, some of these can be found in Solar Flare. And then a lot of the other ones, like I know one off the top of my head that a lot of students are in is the Youth Advisory Board that pairs with the DC Police to talk to students about how the police can better interact with youth. We have several students who are in that. That's one I know about in particular.
Youth and Government also, for some of your students who might be interested in MUN, Youth and Government also is has an external component through the YMCA. And I'm not sure how the Student Advisory Group for the the State Board of Education, the first year I learned of it, we advertised in Solar Flare that they were looking for students. We do always try to keep posting things like that when they come up. And if a Solar Flare isn't coming out soon, we will usually just send it out in an email to students for them to consider applying for. Okay, we are reaching the almost 7:30, so I think we're gonna close down the meeting here. I want to really thank you all for coming, and if you have additional questions or concerns about any part of being at BASIS or the college process or anything, please reach out to your college counselor, Mr. Denny and myself, and let's talk about it so that we can help you and your child, feel good about, your time here. Okay, thank you all, and I'm going to stop the recording and
Thank you,
say-
everyone. I appreciate you all coming out tonight.